back to Chained episode 5. The 5 links into the chain. We now actually have a chain. I think it's fair to say. So last month we did a bit of 90s horror throwback, and that led us to actor Josh Brolin. It was Jack's pick. And Jack, which film did you select for this month's review?
For this episode, we're going to be talking about Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror.
Very nice.
Brolin's impact on that movie.
Yeah, and our first zombie movie, which anyone who knows me knows that's my my favorite genre of horror. So basically, still even despite all the crap that's come out over the years, the many crap zombie films, it is still pretty much my favorite genre. So yes, great to have our first zombie appearance on the show.
We'll go into it more, but I've seen every time I read up on this, it constantly says it's a zombie movie, and I rewatched it, and let's just say I don't entirely agree, but we're going to get into that later on. But, yeah,
yes. It's it definitely straddles that infected zombie, zombies, 28 days later arguments. But yes, great fun. Really, it was really fun to rewatch that. So just to remind everyone, the format before we sort of dive into Planet Terror. So we start off with a little bit of what we've been watching, and then we'll go into our review of Planet Terror. As Jack did the pick this time round, it is my top 3 and worst 3 sort of elements of Planet Terror. And then after our final break, I will announce where the chain is going to take us next. And again, I think, we've been quite generous with each other for the last few films because there's just so much choice from all of these. So yeah, it was a tough one to sort of try and narrow down. But I look forward to revealing where we go next. So let's begin with what we've been watching. So Jack, do you want to go first?
Yeah, and I'm going to start, and I do apologize for everyone listening. I'm going to start on a very negative note. So usually I'll watch a movie and I'll lean more into the positives. Like even if I dislike the movie, I'll lean more into just focusing on the positives. Because at the end of the day, if someone's made a movie, that's a positive in my eyes. They've created something they wanted to make. But I really struggled with this one. I went to the cinema last weekend and I watched Kinds of Kindness. So for anyone that doesn't know, the person behind that is the same person that did Poor Things, Oscar-winning Poor Things, The Lobster, Killing of the Sacred Deer, The Favourite, a masterpiece of movies. And the director is a very stylistic. If you've seen any of their movies, it's very deadpan. It's very sort of monotone, but it's not. It doesn't drag its feet. Unfortunately, I don't know how they crossed the line, but they very much did with Kinds of Kindness. The prosaic pacing's just, for lack of the best way to describe it is dull. Like I came out the cinema and my partner was looking at me. She was just like, and I was silent for the first 5 minutes walking out the cinema because we're very different in terms of taste. And she looked at me. She was like, "Go on then. Tell me what I missed," sort of thing. Like, because I didn't. And I was just like, I was trying to find a better way to put it, but the best way I could describe it is fucking stupid.
Okay.
It's the best. I can't think of a better way to describe it. So it's 3 stories in one. And so I'll give you a bit of an overview of the stories, and I'll do a very condensed version. The first story is about Jesse Plemons, who is a person that'll do whatever his boss commands to be provided for. So whether it's trying to kill someone, whether it's forcing his partner not to conceive, whatever it is that his boss wishes for his entertainment, Jesse Plemons has to do it. Second story is about a person that's convinced that his wife, who's been stranded on an island for an extended period of time, she comes back, he's convinced she's a doppelganger and not real. Once again, played by Jesse Plemons. So I should mention that every person in each story is played by the same actors. They're just playing different roles. Third story is about a cult, and these 2 people, Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, are searching for a person that has to meet a very specific list of requirements and is able to bring the dead back to life. Problem being, and I won't go into it too much, problem being is that his style is very monotone, like I mentioned before. So the benefit of casting the same actors to play a variety of roles in this format in any kind of movie is it shows that range. But because of his style, they're just monotone throughout. And aside from some name changes and some profession changes, they're essentially the same person. And it's so boring. Like, I don't know what, because I watched it, and I've watched his other movies, and they're all sort of monotone, and it's like, but they're hilarious. They're very deadpan. They're very matter of fact. But something was missing, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And the only entertaining parts are the ending of each story. They're quite abrupt. They're quite irreverent. And I was like, that was a bit funny, but it is not worth the journey it takes to get there. And I just think there was no substance in any story. I would say there's more style than substance.
She asked me to fuck her in my uniform, and it hit me hard. We didn't obviously fuck.
And I just think there was no substance in any story. I would say there's more style than substance, but I wouldn't even rate it that. So I just came out and I was just like, so yeah, fucking stupid. It's on that. It's weird because with Poor Things, you pretty much see Emma Stone for all to see, literally pretty much from start to finish. But it does it so often that eventually by the end of the movie, especially with the sex scenes, you become desensitized, and her having sex with someone becomes as arbitrary as like pouring herself a coffee sort of thing. Good Will Hunting reference. But this movie, it almost soils what was accomplished in the last one, because there is skin on show, but it almost, because I feel like he did it as a power move in the last one to desensitize his audience to the human figure, the human form. But in this one, he's very much, it just seems like he's showing skin for skin's sake. And it's just like, I don't, it's bizarre. And everyone says, oh, would you recommend not watching it then? And I'm like, no, watch it. I could be way off. I could have just been having a bad day. God knows. But I don't think I could watch that movie again. Let's change gears. I mean, Carl, what have you been watching recently? Something good, I hope.
Yeah, so I went back to, I guess probably, arguably one of the all-time greats. 1933's King Kong. King Kong, obviously, quite a prominent figure in cinema in recent years. Thanks to the MonsterVerse, and I think after Peter Jackson's epically indulgent 3-hour remake, and King Kong's rarely off our screens. It feels like it's a bit like Godzilla. They're just both there every few years.
Or worse.
And I think it actually is well worth, anybody that loves cinema, it's well worth just going back and just watching King Kong. If you've never seen it, absolutely watch it. If you have, go back and rewatch it if you haven't in a long time, because it just reminds you what a miracle that film was. Yeah. I mean, there are films that genuinely at different points, in cinema will push the boundaries of kind of cinema and what is possible, and move it forward, and I think, you can pinpoint those throughout history, and there's absolutely no doubt King Kong is 100% one of the biggest milestones in cinema. It's unbelievable what they pull off in that movie, effects wise. It starts off because it's so old. It's not 16:9. It's 4:3 frame. It's kind of starts off with quite your usual 30s melodrama. Not much seems to really happen for kind of almost half an hour of its 90-minute runtime. And then they reach Skull Island, and the next hour is just some of the most incredible sort of cinema that they could have produced at that time. It's one of those things where that image of him on the top of the tower at the end, the Empire State Building, it pulls the heartstrings, because he's out of place, out of time. He's not meant to be there. It's this great downfall of this majestic creature. But I think arguably top 3 most iconic moments in cinema, I would say, King Kong at the top of the Empire State Building. Literally everybody knows that shot, even if they've never seen the film.
It was Beauty who killed the beast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that line, which basically you actually just want to punch him because it's all his fault, the only issue I have with that entire film is that he gets no comeuppance for literally like everything that happens. But yeah, I mean, basically, I almost don't need to say much. There's so much out there about it, but all I will say is it's just really look at it and go, how did they do this? Because there is stuff that happens in that film where I was just watching it going, I actually don't know how they did all this. The composite work is just out of this world. There are shots where, you have people in the foreground sort of creeping into like a cave, while in the midground you've got King Kong fighting a giant snake, and then in the background you've got Fay Ray hiding on a cliff, and he's trying to get to her, and they're fighting, and it all looks absolutely seamless. It's like and yet this is a full-grown man who's this big in the frame, and you've got an 18-inch King Kong model, stop motion, this big in the frame. How they did it was it's just out of this world. And it's also the thing that I completely forgot about. It is surprisingly violent, like for a 1930s film, and it's that reminder that if the Hays Code and all that stuff hadn't come in, where cinema might have gone in the 30s and 40s, because they weren't afraid to show proper violence and. It's pretty horrific. I mean, you had Tyrannosaurus, and he wrenches its jaws apart, and literally it does this close up, and you just see all the blood just pouring out of this thing's mouth, and you just think, wow, I'm not used to seeing stuff. And when King Kong goes off, he's stomping on people, he's throwing them out of windows.
It's an absolute badass.
Yeah, it's. I mean, for anyone that loves giant monster movies, it's an absolute must watch. If you've never seen the original, just go back to it. It genuinely is one of the best films probably ever made.
It's probably got on that note of what you were saying, like iconic and Empire State Building and everything. For me, it's very much the first reveal of King Kong with the doors and on his home turf, and it's her scream that totally sells that moment. And even in the Peter Jackson remake, for all its accomplishments. The scream in the original is far better. It's not like an actress sort of Hollywood scream. She is terrified in the big reveal, and like it's one of the best not just big monsters, but best monster reveal in cinema for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's she is the original Scream Queen without a doubt. The feeling that they must have had going in and watching that must have been amazing. I'd love to have just been in the 30s going to see that and just being blown away, because it's the same sort of feeling, same sort of step forward, big technical leap that Jurassic Park had. But yeah, King Kong, brilliant, absolutely holds up. It's a 5-star classic. If you haven't seen it, if you've only seen like the more recent Skull Islands and things like that, and you haven't seen King Kong, it's actually on BBC iPlayer at the moment, so you can watch it for free, and I'd highly recommend it. It's well worth it.
Welcome back. So now we're jumping on to our fifth link in the chain, Planet Terror, and we'll be touching on Josh Brolin's impact on said movie later on. So a bit more about the movie in itself. So in a nutshell, it's about this toxic gas that gets released by the military, goes airborne, leaks down onto people, and they become infected and become, let's just say for argument's sake, flesh-eating zombies. So we'll touch more on that as we go on. But the brilliant thing, the innovative thing about this movie is that it was part of a grindhouse. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino got together and made a grindhouse in the form of Planet Terror and Death Proof. Now, grindhouse were movies that came out in around the 70s or 80s, which were generally gory, splatterfest, exploitation movies in the States, but you would get to see 2 movies in the cinema. So 2 for the price of 1, you'd go in and play 2 movies back to back. So when this was released in the States, it was released as a grindhouse. So you had Planet Terror first, Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror, and then you had Death Proof that followed. Problem being, it was very much, I would argue that it was very much a passion project for Tarantino and Rodriguez, because it's the movies they grew up with and it's the movies they absolutely love. And despite it being advertised as a grindhouse, people would leave after the first movie was screened and they wouldn't watch the second one. But I'm going to stop there and just chuck it over to Carl and what did you think of this whole grindhouse format? I mean, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, so I remember when it came out, and I was gutted when it didn't come out in the UK, because Grindhouse kind of bombed, didn't it? It sort of tanked, I think, at the US box office. I think it's pretty much like Tarantino's only real sort of flop, wasn't it? And then because of that, when it got released, they held off releasing it in the UK, and they decided to then just recut, add more, they just sort of, expanded each one out, released them as just two separate feature films. And I was looking forward to the whole package because you had all those fake trailers and all that stuff. I mean, you can watch it all on YouTube now anyway, but I did notice actually on Amazon Prime, they have got Grindhouse to rent.
I saw that.
And I didn't get a chance to do that before this review, but I 100% am going to do it because I really want to see. I want to see what the original kind of vision for that was, with everything all sort of tied together. It is a lot of fun. And I'm really glad you picked it because it was great to go back. It's funny because I remembered almost nothing. There was about 2 moments in the whole film, and I don't know if I was drunk when I watched it or something, but like, but I couldn't remember any of it. So I was like, oh yeah, this is. I mean, it's a really fun watch. I think I'll do the positives first, and then the negatives will be probably a little bit briefer. But I think I would say just the production values of the film are great. I think they wholeheartedly leapt into the Grindhouse thing, and because of that, there is so much effort just put into the little details of the film, the just the amount of grue and splat and like, you know, the way it's shot, everything is so over the top, intentionally sort of designed. So things like, you know, when they're shooting the squibs, and I mean, they're the most over the top squibs. It's like shooting 6 feet out of everybody, and you know, all the kind of dribbly pus and all that stuff. It's a really slimy, disgusting film, which is kind of exactly what they went out to make. And I think because of that, combined with the aesthetic, which I did tire of it eventually. I think for the first,
we'll get it. Stop.
Yeah, the first hour or so, I was really all in on the scratches and the, you know, all the bits. And in fact, one of my favourite moments, which I'll talk about in a minute, you know, came out of that bit. But I think all of that, the jumpy editing, the kind of intentionally bad acting, some weird camera angles, you know, the whole thing just feels very, very, I mean, it does feel genuinely, for the most part, and I don't think it's entirely successful. I think it does feel like the kind of films they were setting out to make, you know. And I think
absolutely. It was completely deliberate. Like, I noticed like a lot of movies from a lot of exploitation movies from the 70s and 80s, and like some of my favorite horror movies. I'm like, I know why they've done that way. I was watching with my partner, who hasn't got as much of an old school movie head as me, and at one point, I think it was with Josh Brolin holding up the needle.
I'll never see you again.
And the angle it was shot and the zoom in on the needle and the music. She leaned in, she was like, I feel like we're watching Garth Marenghi.
Yeah, yes, and you know, that exact scene, I had the exact same thought. Exactly the same thought. I was just like, this is brilliant. This is like Garth Marenghi. For anyone who's not seen Dark Marenghi's Dark Place, it's it was a kind of 6-part series that just again does the perfect pastiche of that kind of that sort of era of TV film, you know, 70s, really over the top. And I thought the exact same thing. It's it just knows exactly what it's doing for the most part in most of the scenes. I think you know, and that's even like I mean, this could end up being one of those reviews where I'm just going to go, and I love that bit, and I love that bit. But for me, favourite bit of the entire movie, and it was actually one of the only bits of the movie that I remembered, is I love how it kind of goes from this kind of sleazy shot kind of love scene. You get the cigarette burn, the reel melts down, and it just time jumps, and everything's on fire, and they're shooting, and everybody's dead. And it's just, I love that because that was exactly what that format was meant to be. But when they decided to do Grindhouse, that's the kind of thing. Yeah, people talk about 42nd Street and there'd be just missing reels and things played out of order, and you know, reels would just break down, and you know, it kind of just encapsulates that brilliantly. And I think that is honestly one of my favourite moments of the entire movie.
I loved it as well because there's like a massive chunk of story missing as well, but that's part of the bit, that's part of the joke. It's just like when it comes to everything's on fire, Michael Bihn's bleeding out. He's like, if I'd known who you were, like sort of thing, I never would have. And it's like, well, we've missed that story.
Yeah,
and
we've just missed all of that.
A bunch of other people are here as well. They found their own way here, and then that's how all the characters are together. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that works really, really well. So I think where it sort of takes those chances and it sort of plays with the format, I think it's very, very, very good. I think with the grading and stuff, I think, I mean, like, right from the opening, I mean, you just go from the opening credit, like when it does the Dimension logo, all of that is just perfect. And I even I kind of love the opening credits, because I know it's that kind of sleazy camera view of Rose McGowan dancing, but you get that brilliant shot at the end where you realize she's crying, and it's like, you know, the way it was shot, there's definitely like a style to it. You feel you're just watching something straight from the 70s.
It feels very from the 70s, like on that exact note, because I wrote down that scene in particular. It's very 70s, especially with the cry and the way it's shot. It's very sort of like you only found that style back then, how it was filmed. But then I also wrote that it's kind of a strength of Rodriguez, as he's very good at doing. No, it's not objectification. It's like angry. It's like passionate, and he did the exact same thing in Sin City with someone dancing on stage as well. And it's just like he has a knack. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's
angry, passionate for sure.
The whole thing with Grindhouse was exploitation.
Yeah.
And he's doing a scene that's intentionally exploitative, but actually manages to do it in a way that doesn't feel like exploitative because it's actually relevant to kind of the style. It sets the scene, but it's not like he's just perving out and making a poker shoot. And I think because of the crying, that's the bit for me. Like that sold it, because you sort of go, it's got a really powerful sort of final shot.
Sure.
And that sets the scene quite nicely. I think there's a few moments like that throughout where it just really nails it. I think that scene with Josh Brolin in the cupboard with his wife, I think that really just felt like that kind of film,
Yeah, sure.
So that's that for me is very good. I mean, it had some great talent. I think it was Greg Nicotero, did the special effects, so you just know that the effects work in that was going to be terrific. And it was nice to see Tom Savini in there as an actor. I think because he's obviously popped up in a couple of Rodriguez things now, but he would have loved what was going on with the makeup and everything as well.
The practical effect, like the bladder effect. It's just like everything that you loved back in the day is in this movie. It's obviously one of the, I know we talked about it being done to death and a bit of a downside, but like you say, the scratches and stuff and the blips sometimes aided the practical effects, like cutting with head explosions and stuff like that. And it made the blip like, okay, that's fine sort of thing. So it did well for those kind of
Yeah, exactly. I also think that where it kind of is at its best is where it sort of, it leans into, and this kind of moves into point 2, I guess, which is kind of the tone of it. I really like, for the most part, the sort of tone of the film and where it sort of goes, because it does a very difficult job of not, it is very stupid. It's very stupid, but it's also kind of not in places, and it rides this fine line. And I think actually where it works at its best is kind of, we always love to loop back on the chains here, but looping back to what we said about Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
I feel where it's at its best is where it's doing what is almost like a good or a bad film, and then it just ramps it up 10, 20%. I think it's like it just makes it's like they've shot it as if it's just straight up, but then they just put a little bit too much on top of the action, a little bit too much to kind of, it's just that bit where it's like, it's a pastiche, but it's like, it's close enough. You can almost go, this could always just be a good 70s action movie, because the thing with Grindhouse stuff is it's not all terrible, but I think it's easy for people to just sort of go, Grindhouse movies, that's like crap movies. But it's like, actually, it's some brilliant, you got the work of like Jack Hill and people like that. There's some incredible stuff in the 70s, that was made. So, the Walter Hill and things like that. So I think where it's doing that in a similar way to Kill Bill, that's when it's at its best. So a couple of specific moments. There's some subtle stuff. I love the fact that like every time the army appear, they just abseil in. There's no reason for them to be abseiling, but they just abseil in. It's like this really subtle joke, and it's just very, it made me laugh, because at the beginning, that action scene kicks off and these guys just abseil, and you're like, where the hell did they come from? And then they're on the bridge, and these guys just abseil down on the bridge. And I loved that. I thought that's nice. It's quite subtle. It's not like in your face. Some people might not even think that's funny. You know what I mean? Like they might not even notice. But
absolutely, there was, on that note of the abseil, it's like I looked into this a bit further because the Bruce Willis cameo, it's on that note that you just mentioned when they abseil in. What they used to do back in the day with grindhouses and like these low budget movies, they would cast a top end actor and just sort of like put them in a few scenes, but they would always be in scenes where they weren't in the same shot together, and then they would put them in the movie and give them top billing and put them front and center on the poster so people would go and see it. And Robert Rodriguez said he did that intentionally as a joke with Bruce Willis, and that's why Bruce Willis in all of his scenes is always looking at them, and you never see them both in the same frame.
Yes,
and that was a nod to what they used to do with exploitation films back in the day.
That's okay. Do you know, I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. He's never in the same frame with any of the main leads. So even at the end when there's the showdown or whatever, it's it's just him shot straight on, mid shot.
He did all his scenes in a day, apparently.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, I can imagine quite a few of the people in it.
Presumably, people went to see Planet Terror because front and center on the poster there's Bruce Willis.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of sort of the casting in it kind of could feel like stunt casting, but then like you say, that's exactly the point. So I think it's one of those films where stunt casting actually worked in its favor. I really liked like another scene that I mean how I'd forgotten this scene. I've got no idea, but like the bit, and this is amazing. I mean, it was the one where it kind of rode the line of like it's moving into. Like we said with Last Action Hero, it could quite easily have moved into like being an airplane movie. You know, it managed to sort of pull it back. And Planet Terror occasionally, I think, falls over the line. I think it wants its cake and eats it. But the scene that just I was laughing my ass off was the escape from the barbecue house. And they open the boot and he pulls out the motorbike.
Fast.
0 to 50 in 4 seconds.
And it's just shot like it's the most straight up action scene, but he's on this tiny little bike and he just rides off and he's shooting all the zombies, and it's shot beautifully, and they're coming through the mist and like, you know, they're capping, the squibs are going off, but he's just on this like 1 foot high motorbike, and that made me laugh so much. And I think those are the moments where it absolutely nails what it's set out to. It's like going, yeah, we're nodding, we're winking, we know this is stupid.
Hilarious splatterfest, and that's the scene that totally like signifies what this movie's about for me. That highway scene of him on the bike and like everyone just bursting off the trucks. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, because there are a few quite effective scenes. I mean, the other scene that works incredibly well is as an action scene, but again, it's really over the top. Is when Al Ray goes into the hospital and he's fighting them all, but it's that kind of intentionally, like he backflips off the wall for absolutely no reason.
No need for that backflip.
It's just no need at all, but it's so badass, you know. And it's like it's the sort of thing, you know. Like John Wick would do, straight faced, but he just like it's kind of slightly slow, and all the moves are really over the top, and obviously like the blood's spraying out everywhere, and so it's just so over the top. But it's actually quite an enjoyable action scene, despite that, you know. And there's all the details in the background, all the stuff going off. I mean, when he's in this corridor, there's only 2 or 3 of them, but suddenly he opens the doors, and there's just dozens of people like running towards him. It's really nice, like really nice choreographed kind of set piece stuff, you know, and you just sort of go, well, if this was a real 70s Grindhouse film, it would be one of the good ones, you know. And then there are moments where suddenly you go like, no, this would be a terrible movie because they're intentionally making it a terrible movie. But I mean, any thoughts on that in terms of just the sort of the tone, any sort of bits, what sort of works best for you?
So go on the tone, like I say, it would be one of the good ones. And I mentioned this before. It's a shame because if they took away the cell phones, like, and maybe changed the fashion a bit, that is all that lets you know that like this is set like in the noughties sort of thing. And there's a scene where I love it, but it wouldn't allow me to have like. It allows me to have my cake and eat it sort of thing. So my biggest gripe is, like I say, that it wasn't set in the 70s. But one of the scenes that I absolutely love is when Josh Brolin confronts his wife, and there's this shot where he puts the 2 cell phones together and compares the messages and then parts them on her face. and it's one of my favorite shots in the movie.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, well, no, because you can't have if you either want a 70s exploitation movie or you want it set in the noughties. So that scene wouldn't have worked.
I actually love that. I mean, to be fair, I didn't really kind of. I don't think I had a problem with the cell phones. I don't. At no point I think was I bothered by that, because I think their intention was probably more to sort of go, what if that was the aesthetic now, rather than like, let's make a movie from then. I think it was fine that there was kind of modern elements to it, because there wasn't too much. And actually, I felt that the trucks and the clothing, the stuff the army guys and that was wearing felt very, very 1970s, 1980s military movie. So there's only kind of a few things. I mean, even the lab coats, the hospital felt really old fashioned.
It created an element of confusion though for me.
Yeah.
I understood it and I was like, I get it, but like it could like sort of merge between like, so it was a bit confusing.
Yeah. I suppose now you mention it, it's kind of weird that like you've got mobile phones and everything they were clearly setting out, I think, costume wise and stuff, to do a kind of sort of 70s, 80s aesthetic, but then it follows did the same thing, and that worked.
To touch back on what you said before, like in terms of the choreography and the fun elements, I think one of Robert Rodriguez's strengths, especially, I think this is when he was like peak, because he was just coming off the back of Sin City. Cool as fuck is the best way to describe Robert Rodriguez when he's doing 10 out of 10. And watching this movie, I'm just like, my God, like he just knows how to shoot cool. He did the exact same with Dusk Till Dawn. He did the exact same with Sin City. And I don't know if another person made the same kind of movie, it would come across as seedy, it would come across as cheap. But I think sexy, like not just the women, but everything in his movies are just like, when he's making this kind of movie, George Clooney in Dusk Till Dawn, like I say, numerous characters in Sin City, this movie as well, everyone just looks cool and everyone just looks sexy, and I think that's one of his strengths. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, going right back to Desperado, like the way he shoots Antonio Banderas, he's always been, I completely agree with that. He really knows how to make people look badass, like cool. You either want to sleep with them or you want to be them, right? I mean, that's the aesthetic.
That's brilliant.
I'll be absolutely honest. I don't know if I've seen another movie Freddy Rodriguez is in. It
was a weird one. It was a weird choice. Not to say he didn't nail it. He was cool.
I think he's great. Yeah, does a really, really solid job as a kind of cool action lead, And I was surprised that I just wasn't familiar with him at all. And
Poseidon, I mean Poseidon, but yeah.
But like I say, the scene where he's mowing them down in the hospital, or kind of, where they're all sort of shooting him. I love the scene where he says, "I never miss," and then she's running to the petrol pump, like past the petrol pumps, and it's like, again, that was another bit where they just nailed it, because it's like, it's a good action scene, but again, it's just ramped up, just cars just exploding, and it's just so over the top, but it's kind of but it's actually a fun moment. I thought, as she's running through it reminded me of the kind of scenes you get in those great zombie movies, like Return of the Living Dead and things like that, where they're running through them, and just, it's like one wrong move and you're dead.
Well, to like another trope, because like I say, in this movie they just tick all the boxes for all the tropes, including his relationship with Michael Biehn, the police officer, even though El Rey is like this like infamous badass that like never misses. He's got that stereotypical relationship with the police officer that doesn't trust him, and just like won't take him out the cuffs. And it's just like, in the scene that was hilarious for me, it's like, right, the all or nothing box empties out, everyone gets a badge
except for you, Ray.
Like he's adamant, like, no, except for you. It's like, why so much animosity? But they always have, back then, these movies, the sheriff always had animosity against the hero that talks.
Especially if the hero's like a kind of outsider, leather jacket. It's that. It's very much that sort of Stephen King-y, Stephen King sort of aesthetic of the kind of outsider. And I think Michael Biehn is terrific in this, and I think that whole plot line was really fun. They kept coming back to that, and in fact, that again was some of it. It's just like, I loved how they kept some of those plot lines going, and those jokes, they became better and like, more enjoyable. I loved like the through line of the barbecue sauce. fantastic.
Like, I want to try that barbecue. Like, I want a cup of barbecue juice.
Just Jeff Fahey's so brilliant in that film, and but I love the whole Michael Biehn and him. You know, when he's on the phone and he's just like, "You better give me the recipe."
Yeah, you cook it at 250, don't you?
Take it to his grave, and that just pays off beautifully. That is, for me, in fact, I would say out of the whole movie, that through line of Michael Biehn and Jeff Fahey's characters right through to their kind of end is the film doing what it does perfectly.
It circles back brilliantly, like those two. Like at the start, he's just like, "Is barbecue good?" He's like, "Best in Texas." And then at the end, he's just like, "You've got a great brother here," and he's like, "Best in Texas." So it's like,
exactly. Yeah, so and it's over the top. It's silly. It's the big sacrifice, but like they just it nails it because it's got that element of silliness. But you actually I quite like those characters, you know. So it's like, even as silly as the film was, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's like, it's quite heartwarming. They died together, and he found out the recipe at last. I actually
gets the notepad out. He's just like, get it.
He knows he's about to die. He's still writing it down. That was I loved all that. And I think, in fact, Jeff Fahey had some of the best moments in the movie. And then it's just, they just turn it into a joke. And I loved all that. Yeah, that for me is the tone, absolutely like on the money. And there's just a lot of that throughout it. I was just enjoying the hell out of the film. I think, and that leads me to my third point, which is the cast in general. I think, you know, I think it is brilliantly cast. Like you say, he was coming off the back of Sin City, which had a fantastic cast, and I think everybody wanted to work with Rodriguez at this point. Everyone wanted to work with Tarantino, so they always had like a hit list of who they could get, you know. But I think everybody, even the characters I don't know so much of, you know, the actors in it, they all just kind of I thought do a great job of setting up their characters, their conflicts, their relationships. I actually think Rose McGowan and Freddie Rodriguez have got a really good chemistry. I genuinely think that actually really works, and that's one of those things where sometimes those really terrible action movies and stuff fall flat because of a bad chemistry, and they could have gone down that route. But I like the fact they actually made you kind of like that pair, you know. And
he's got like no sympathy for her whatsoever. He's just like, let's just get on with it. Like, he's got her back. You know for a fact he's going to look after her, but at the same time, I'm not going to feel sorry for you. Here's a stick on your leg. Let's go. Table leg.
Oh, it's so, like, the leg stuff is so stupid. But but they play it so straight, like, between them. But it is literally like, what he's doing is just like in any other like reality would be horrendous. He's just like, because like you say, he doesn't care, but because of the tone they go for, it just works. He's just like, you know, cares about her, but it's just like, don't feel sorry, bang. You
I don't know if people get away with it now, but it's a credit to the way that Robert Rodriguez can put these things in his movie and they will stand the test of time. And their relationship, for me, is summed up in that one scene where she realizes she hasn't got a leg, and he sort of like gives her a peg leg sort of thing. And she's just like, God, like, how am I going to be a stand-up comedian now? He's like, come on, some of the best jokes are about cripples.
Yeah,
not just like,
when he said that line, I was like, oh. Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah. Imagine that now.
The noughties, what a time to be alive.
But yeah, the casting, like, I mean, like, just going from sort of start to finish, you know, you get that open, you get the reveal of Bruce Willis. Mm-hmm. Bruce Willis isn't in it much, but I think he's very good. You know, knows what he's doing, plays it just very, very kind of almost like one note.
Very Bruce Willis.
But he's very, very good at, you know, just doing that. He plays it just very cool, sort of, you know, Bruce Willis. You've got, the Jeff Fahey, Michael Biehn. I loved all the stuff with, I mean, Tom Savini. There was that sort of running gag of how he just keeps cocking up. Like, he actually says, he says during the shootout outside the police station, "Don't shoot me." And when you get that missing reel and it cuts back, he's like, "I told you not to shoot me." And I love the fact that comes back.
His finger and his eyes are wide. He's just like an absolute caricature of a person when he's trying to get his finger back. And then he gets his ring and goes to put it on. He forgets. He's like, "Oh, that's right, I've lost my finger." Hilarious.
And that, I mean that whole scene at the police station, I think is one of the better bits of the film. I think that was that's really good because it's where everything just sort of kicks off. But they just do it in such a great way. I thought that it was going to be like, they're all going to die apart from Michael Biehn and two of them, or whatever. But actually, they keep most of those characters going for a good chunk of the film. And I thought that worked really great. I think I love Michael Parks in it. Sheriff Earl
McGraw's. I'm trying to put together how many times he's played that character now, because he played it in Dusk, he played it in Kill Bill, so he always comes back to play Sheriff Earl McGraw when
literally the same guy, right?
Yeah.
So, but he's just got such a great way of sort of he is the epitome of that Southern sheriff, and I think he knows what he's in. He knows the film he's in because he plays it so straight. There's that sort of scene where he's talking about his wife and he's talking about cancer, and it's quite sort of heartwarming. But then it's just all it is a setup for his wife to turn into a monster. And then that reveal when the door opens and there's just blood, just like his house is just an absolute bloodbath. And it's just like he's done what he had to do, and I mean, we'll talk about him more, but I think one of the real strong points of the film is Josh Brolin. I mean, I think he's absolutely brilliant, and I think he's absolutely terrifying. In fact,
sure, like he made me feel like I cheated on him at one point. Like he had such a presence, like I felt like I cheated on him. I was like, oh god,
Yeah, man, he's like he was properly frightening in that film, and I think because of that, he gets some great moments, and I think we could talk about that in a bit, but I think because of the fact that he's in that storyline, he gets those moments like with the syringes and the close-ups, and it's a very different style. It's the sort of subplot you might get in a horror movie, but it also would just be like if it was just a thriller and there weren't even zombies, you could still imagine that character just being like, the centerpiece of that thriller, and I think he again just gets the film he's in. But there are, I think everybody in it has like, they make sure everybody's got like a very specific sort of character, a very specific plot, a device, the syringe belt. When she first kind of reveals that, it's like, what the hell's going on here? But
sexy, because it's another note of what I said before. Everything about this movie is like sexy and cool, and she's got this syringe holster, and I was just like, it's
badass, right?
It's badass, yeah.
But yeah, I think. I mean, what do you think about the sort of cast in general? Any sort of standouts for you? I mean, who kind of really sells
the casting, I think, like you say, Freddy Rodriguez. I'm surprised he's not in more, because he did a very good job of not carrying that movie, but sort of leading it. I loved Rose McGowan in that movie, and won't go too much into what she does off camera because it sounds like she had a very bad time behind the scenes, but on camera she is just absolutely tremendous to watch, and she is very deadpan and very funny in that movie when she's walking with the bit of debris in her leg. And it's like, you all right? And she's like, I'm just Cherry. It's like, you sure are. It's just everything about that. Like she, that role wouldn't have worked as well if it was in someone else's hands or legs even. I don't know what you think about that.
Very good. Actually, I didn't talk about Rose McGowan, but I think, you're right. She actually is the kind of heart of the film, and I think pulls it off brilliantly, because she does the action stuff really well. She is very cool. I think just really cool. And I remember actually thinking when I watched Scream that she was pretty cool then as well. Her character just, she's very likable screen presence. And she hasn't done an awful lot. I don't want to get into anything off camera or whatever, but it must be a shame because I don't know if her career has been kind of affected by all that sort of stuff, because she's she had a real I think she sort of wholeheartedly throws herself into the role. Like I say, she takes it. There's moments where she sort of sells the drama a bit, of taking it quite seriously. Her and Al Ray actually for quite a lot of the film play it almost completely straight. There's a lot of stupidity going on around. But their relationship is played quite straight.
That 2 weeks that I looked for it for 2 weeks. That was a brilliant scene, brilliant bit of dialogue when the penny drops about and I looked for it for 2 weeks, and it's just like I love that whole scene. He's like smoking a red apple cigarette, when he first brings it up. And then it's like, okay, enough of the seriousness. Let's show a sex scene. And then you just see that peg leg point to the ceiling.
Yeah.
The leg around him. It's absolutely
it's very, very good. I think there were a couple of moments. I mean, I really liked her exit from the go-go strip club at the beginning. I like that scene.
Even that middle finger, like the way she did it and held it up, like when she did it, I was like, "Cool, you just did that. It's really cool way."
Very cool. When she's in the barbecue pit, when she meets El Rey, I think there's some really really good scenes with her. And actually, like at the end, what an amazing shot! Like she's so beautiful. The very last shot where it properly looks like old film stock, and she's got the kind of turban around her, and she's got the baby on her back, and I mean, she looks like an absolute movie star in that final frame, and it's I think she's kind of the linchpin of the whole movie. I think if that performance wasn't as good, if you'd got somebody, I mean, at the time, let's just say Paris Hilton or something, it would have been absolutely bloody awful, you know what I mean? But instead, she kind of, again, they really knew what they were doing. And I think, I think they're my sort of favorite sort of pairing in the whole film, I think,
No, and I mean, while we're on the topic of casting, I don't know what it is, but every time, Rodriguez and Tarantino get together, it must come up like Tarantino's just like, so which rapey individual am I playing in this movie? Like every time he gets given a part when the two work together, and like at the end, and he's even in this movie, Tarantino's even credited as rapist number 1. That's what his character's going.
Really so. And I think we'll save that. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. So I mean that's it really. So I think I love the production design. I do think it goes too far by the end. I think there's a few points where I was like, all right, enough of the scratches there. I mean, like, we get it. It was like it's constant all the way through, the scratching and the burning and all that sort of stuff. The sort of color jumps, the grade changing, all that stuff. There's so much of that. But yeah, I think it's that side of it, cast, tone, all of that. It's very, very fun. Hour 40, I think. Okay, welcome back now. So we're going to be into the talking about, I guess, the things I was less happy with as I watched the film, and I don't think these. I don't know how sort of deep we'll go on these, but I think there's definitely a few. For me, I think the biggest problem of the film is possibly the fact that it was extended out to an hour 40, because I think there's almost too much going on. I think they could have done with just losing just a few characters. Like, it reaches the point where it's just so stuffed. They're trying to get so many sort of characters and storylines and cameos and everything in, that actually it did start to annoy me by about the hour 10 mark. And I found the last half hour is not as good, like not as enjoyable as the first hour. I think there's some great moments, but I think a lot of the stuff I didn't like is kind of towards the end. But I think, too much going on. Like for example, the scene where Josh Brolin's wife, the nurse, gets home with to pick up her kid, and there's the two twins, and then they start like beating her car up and being all aggressive, and I was just like, who are these? Why is this happening? I don't care. They were annoying. Yeah. It just was like, what did that add? You know what I mean? What did that scene add? And I think there's quite a few bits like that throughout the film. I think the worst, without a doubt, I won't leave it hanging because you said it just before the break, but the worst, without a doubt, is the Tarantino scene. I just thought it was just shit, like genuinely just shit. And I was like, it's nasty. I get that. Yes, you get horrible stuff in exploitation movies and Grindhouse, but like, it didn't add kind of anything. It didn't have anything to say about that. It wasn't like poking fun at a rapey scene. It was just a rapey scene. And I was it's really, I just found it, the tone of that scene felt so wrong compared to the rest of the film. And and not in some sort of like, I'm not moral guardian in this. It's like, it's just a bad bit of writing. It's just a bad, I mean, Tarantino is like, should just never be in movies most of the time. But like, I just found it really distracting. As soon as he came in, I'm like, oh, here's the Tarantino cameo. And then it's like, it just keeps going. And he's the scene in the lift, I found quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then it keeps going. And even by the time it gets to the payoff, like, it's just nasty. And I was like, and not in a kind of, oh, that's funny Grindhouse. It's just like, yeah, that's just really icky. I was kind of glad when that scene was over, really.
No, I'm inclined to agree with you. I always try my best to imagine what the lines would sound like coming from someone else, because he writes these cool as fuck lines, but his delivery on them isn't always that good. And when he was in the lift and he was like, do you want to say like fuck you to me? Do you want to say fuck you? And I was just like, would that sound better coming from someone else? But I think you're right in what you're saying, and that scene is just uncomfortable. And the payoff is obviously, well, he gets his just desserts when he gets shot through the wall when she first gets the leg.
Yeah.
But it's not worth it not to contradict myself, but on the reverse side of the same coin, one of my favorite makeup scenes is when you see his face at the end when he's all falling to bits, not his dick melting off. I was just like, but when you see his face melted, it's very much the 80s Blob. I was like, I love that.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, again, the makeup on that is brilliant. But that could have been anyone. You know, it could have been anyone. It could have been that whole scene. I just felt like it didn't add anything. That both of those scenes, the lift and the kind of potential rape scene, that it didn't add anything to the movie at all. Yeah. It's just like happens. It could have been any soldiers. It could have happened in 30 seconds. You know, it could have just been, they could still have done the grenade launcher through the door. You didn't need to, like, we just didn't need that, I think. You know, it was, it felt like they just put it in, and that to me felt like a scene where Tarantino and Rodriguez got to go, and it's one of those where they just went a bit too far with it, you know, and kind of like, oh, how much can we get away with? Oh, how far can we push it? Oh, what else is it right now? Oh, rape! Oh, we haven't had a rape scene. Oh, let's do that. And you just go, it just adds nothing. And I think I'd imagine that I can't imagine that's even in the like Grindhouse version. I don't know, like. That would surely be
like, I mean, they pushed the envelope quite far, but like I say, they executed it like not similarly, but they did the same sort of thing with Dusk Till Dawn. But that's an example of it being executed well.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Kind of played a big part in the movie. So for that reason, like, but then he's like they've collaborated again. He's cast himself as the same type of character, and it's kind of like, I think you have a bit of a problem.
yeah, definitely, and I think it just definitely just left a bad taste in my mouth. But I think that was just an example of where I feel it should have been. Most movies like of that era were 80, 90 minutes. This was an hour 40. Hour 40 generally isn't like a low budget film length. Yeah. You know, that's the studio length. And I feel that like if they got it down to 80, 90 minutes, this would have been like a much better film. There's a few other bits. I mean, the other bit I really didn't like, I really hated Naveen Andrews' character. Like that just didn't land for me. The balls thing, like. Yeah.
I love ridiculousness. I love ridiculous gore and stuff like that. But for that, and I know how ridiculous the movie gets, but those two scenes, the balls and the rapey bit, just fell out of place. Yeah. And like carrying his bag as like a trophy and his knife and stuff. And I'm just like, man, you belong in another movie. It's not this one.
Yeah. And I think, you know, because he was in Lost at the time, wasn't he? And I think this is kind of the only movie I've seen him in, and I can kind of understand why. I don't think he's not a movie actor. It's one of the only, I'd say, kind of bad performances. I just didn't think his performance was very good. I love his death. Like, it's awesome.
One of the best.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's one of the best.
Brilliant. And it happens so like flipping, like so like, oh, all of a sudden, because he's like about to help them, and then that happens. It's like brilliant. Like maybe if they just took away the balls joke, because there was too much to focus on with that character. And like when you've got a woman with a machine gun leg in a movie, like giving every character a trope just becomes a bit of a headache in the end.
And I think that's it. You've nailed it. That's exactly it. It's there's too much going on because they try to give every single character a thing. And some of them didn't need a gimmick. Some of them just needed to just be there and just say some funny lines or whatever. I think the fact that every single character has that. And I think so that leads me on to, I guess, point two, which is I said earlier, I love it where it's kind of a bad, objectively sort of action horror movie ramped up 20-30%. I don't like it in the movie where it suddenly goes so stupid that it's just, it takes it so far. I had the same issue with Machete, actually. There's bits of that where you just go, I mean, Machete's just done from bloody start to finish, but
It worked as a trailer. Machete worked for me as a trailer, and it should have stopped.
But some of it is just so fucking dumb. And I don't think it needed both. I think he just needed to pick. Was he making a ridiculous over-the-top spoof? Was he doing a kind of Last Action Hero sort of pastiche? Don't try and do both. And we said that with Last Action Hero. It's like they chose to go down, it's a pastiche, it's not a full-blown fast, spoof. And I think he kind of tries to have his cake and eat it. And particularly, I think the thing that grated the most for me, other than the things like the balls, jokes or whatever, which I felt just didn't land, it was the physical comedy. I think some of the physical comedy just felt so stupid to me that it kind of kept taking me out of it a bit. Like where she goes all numb and she's trying to drive the car and it's all flippy floppy hands. And I was just like, that felt like something from Naked Gun versus you know what I mean? Versus the other stuff that was going on around them. And so I felt the tone just sometimes would just veer all over the place. Like in one scene, you get sort of badass kind of, over the top, silly, the little motorbike and all that sort of stuff. But then at the same time, you suddenly get a scene where, that sort of stuff's happening at the same time. And it's just
it's a weird line.
Where are we going with this? How silly are we going? And a perfect case in point, I really hate the shot at the end where she's running along, blows in the air, and then bloody shoots everybody. I was just like, I get it. It's a cool shot.
It's a weird shot, and I'll tell you why. Because if you watch this movie on DVD or if you watch it in the cinema or whatever, and you got that fake Machete trailer, at the end of the trailer, there's an explosion. He goes flying up on a motorbike with sort of like a minigun and starts shooting it, and it is the exact same shot as the finale of this movie when she flies up and the explosion and everything. So, for all intents and purposes, if you watch that trailer and then this movie, you've already seen that shot. Which is weird because I think
it's weird.
A really badass finale. Yeah.
Because I've not seen the Machete trailer. So that's a strange choice. Yeah, it's like
trailer, not the actual movie, the fake purpose-built trailer before this movie. Yeah, it's really weird because it's like, you made that joke shot for a fake trailer, and then you've just gone ahead and used it for the finale of this movie.
I think in a way that showcases exactly what we said about Rodriguez, and I think that probably plays into this point, which is he never knows when enough is enough. And I think that's him at his absolute best is where he somehow gets restrained a little bit. Like Dusk Till Dawn is a very stupid film, but it restrains itself in all the right places. And the comedy lands, the horror lands, the action lands, and it's this great amalgamation of all of them. I think the same Sin City is just a very subtle, brilliant film, and I don't know how much Frank Miller had to do with that, if I'm honest.
It was brilliant. It was this was one of the points I actually wanted to make, in that Robert Rodriguez was such a stylistic director, but none of his he made very creative choices, and yet his movies were the same but completely different. With the likes of Sin City and the likes of Planet Terror, one was one of the best executions of a comic book I've ever seen on screen, and this was like a perfect nod. The exploitation Grindhouse movies, because he knows how to nail the stunts. Like, what's he going to do next? And then after that, he did Dame to Kill for, and it just wasn't as good as the first Sin City. Yeah. And then he just it's you don't have any more tricks up your sleeve. And then he kept going back to Spy Kid movies, and it's just like, oh my god,
he just goes back to the well a lot. But there's been signs of it, of other things, because I mean, one of the films I absolutely detest of his is Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and I like Desperado. Once Upon a Time in Mexico was like trying to do the same thing, but it had no cohesion at all. It was just a mess, an absolute mess of a movie. And because he writes, directs, shoots, edits, does the music, you can only blame him. He's a very rare filmmaker. And I mean, yes, you can always blame the director, but sometimes a film is just broken because, like, you know, the studio interferes or whatever. But with Rodriguez, he is ultimately the decider on everything he edits because he is the editor. And Once Upon a Time in Mexico is just, I think, his worst film. I think it's an absolute abomination of a movie. And like, it's so bad in every way. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The action's a mess. Yeah. And I felt there was moments in Planet Terror where it's like, which Rodriguez are we getting? You know, we getting the one who really gets what he's doing, or the one that's suddenly going, this will be fun. Oh, this will be fun. And
there are a lot of those
kid in a sweet shop, you know.
Yeah.
And I can imagine he's a little kind of manic on set and unrestrained. You know, he's like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and oh, let's do it. Because I just found some of it like just didn't quite land. So I liked, I mean, like you said about when Freddy sticks El Rey sticks the leg on, you know, that's a great scene. It comes after that action scene in the corridor. But then, you know, you get him killing some more zombies, but she's doing that silly wobbling on the leg thing, and it's all a bit like it reminds me of, you know, like that really awful Lee Evans bit in Something About Mary, where it's just a scene where he's on the sticks and
wobbling back and forth,
and it's just like, it's just not funny. I think those were the big three, though. Is the I didn't like the paralysis stuff that much. I think it could have been funny to a point, but it was like it just went on for bloody ages, and I was like,
funnily enough, I mean, it's connected to one of my favorite shots of the movie. Let's go with one of my favorite. As gory as this movie is, like, I don't really like wince it gore too much, but especially when it's over the top, I just have a good time. But one of the hard to watch, I was watching with my partner, and the pus bursting on the face with Josh Brolin, she was like, ugh. Didn't bother me in the slightest. But one of the ones I was like, oh, and it's the paralysis scene when she's trying to get in the car, she shoves her hand down the handle and then she slips, and then the crunch. I was like, every time I watch that scene, absolutely brilliant.
It just goes so broad. It's like, it is so broad that I feel sometimes like those moments don't quite land.
They could have done one or two max, but they keep doing it. They keep doing the gags, and it's just like, we'll get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like one scene, fine, get it. Okay, she's recovered now.
But it's a trope in the movie, like say the format in the scratches and everything. It's very much like, there's tons of moments in this movie where it's like, we'll get it. Chuck in the bag of balls of Bruce Willis at the end, we'll get it. You know, it's full of we get it moments.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great way to sum it up, I think. I definitely got it. And I think about an hour 10 into it, I got it enough where I was like, there's still another 30 minutes of this. And I kind of felt like that whole ending. I mean, if you got rid of the Tarantino stuff, if you got rid of, some of the Naveen Andrew stuff, that alone would have shaved like 5-10 minutes off the film. You know? I think it doesn't really sort of add much. So this is a bit more of a sort of broader point, and I think, and it's not. I don't think this isn't like a negative because I wrote this list and then I was like, do you know what? I actually kind of like all of them, but I kind of, my negative is kind of what Grindhouse then did to cinema.
Yes.
And the amount of people that now think they can just make a shitty exploitation film and call it like, we made a movie and it's a pastiche or whatever. But it's like, it's become a little bit of a crutch. And there's been a lot of films that followed in its wake. But then I wrote the list, I was saying, because there's a lot of films that came afterwards, that use that sort of Grindhouse aesthetic. You got like Hobo with a Shotgun, you got Turbo Kid, VFW, the one I told you about recently, with Stephen Lang, and Machete obviously came right out the back of this. And I don't think, Machete maybe I'm not such a fan of, but I actually enjoyed the hell out of the other three, so I was like, I don't know if this is necessarily like a real negative, but it's like, I think people making shitty films to make shitty films, it's fine if you're Rodriguez and Tarantino and you had a career and you've kind of, done enough of this where you can then do something that looks shitty. But when somebody makes a film and it's like their first film and they just go for that kind of Grindhouse aesthetic, I think it's a bit of an easy touch. I think it's a bit of a...
They're making a shit film for the sake of making a shit film, and it doesn't stink of effort. And when it doesn't stink of effort, there are so many subtleties in Planet Terror that I absolutely love, which allows it to stink of effort for some of its failings. But then what came after that, with people being like, oh, we can just make a shitty movie. And it's like, no, because if it doesn't have that effort, then that is literally all you have is a shitty movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's harking back to a time where that aesthetic was, real. Not like they weren't saying, let's bring it back and make it a genre now, and I think it's time for it to be put to bed, a bit. I just like, I don't mind watching it. Like I said, BFW was fun, but it's like, it was pretty forgettable fun, It was like, it was gory and schlocky and, it had a brilliant cast. And, but I just think, I'm sort of done with that now. If I watch like films like that are intentionally just shitty, I don't think that's what they set out to do, but it's kind of become a bit of a lingering thing now. I mean, we're like, 15 years on or so from Grindhouse, and people are still making Grindhousey copy films. It was only a quick point on that, really. I think it can become a bit of a crutch to filmmakers, and it's time to kick the crutch away,
I completely agree. It's the exact same that, like, as great as Jaws was, like, one of the masteries of cinema, one of the worst things that happened to cinema was Jaws 2, because that just encouraged people to make sequels on the back of successful movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, but it's even when the aesthetic itself then just kind of drives a film. It's the same as like, I suppose it's a slight sort of different variation on what like the Asylum do, with making shitty films, but shitty digital films, and they look shitty with shitty effects, and you just go, I get it. We get it, but it's like, they're doing it intentionally, and it's like to just go out and go, I'm going to make a Grindhouse film, I think is, yes, it might be a stylistic choice, but I've kind of seen it all now. We've had post-apocalyptic, we've had sci-fi, we've had action, we've had horror. It's like, we've done all the genres, let's
but he paved, like, Rodriguez, like, paved the way, and it's a testament to his skills. Like I say, it's the reason I say it is a mastery is because he did a brilliant nod, like, aside from some of the negatives, but he did the exact same thing with Sin City. I know Frank Miller and Zack Snyder and Tarantino were involved with that, but once again, Rodriguez was the front runner. He paved the way, and similar to what's happened with you said he didn't know when to stop, and then he did Machete, and it's like, oh, I've seen this before, sort of thing. And the same thing that happened with Hobo and a Shotgun, and everyone just started like riding that. Someone made The Spirit after, Frank Miller made The Spirit after Sin City, and it's like, it's been done. Like, it was fun because it hadn't been done. Like, people should take this as a note to be like, what else can we do that hasn't been done? Not that was successful, I'm going to try and do the same thing. It was successful because it hadn't been done before,
Yeah. So, that's it. But I mean, overall, I'd definitely say it's way more positive than negative. I mean, I'd still rate it a 4 out of 5 or something. I think it's a lot of fun. It's just the bits that are bad are just really bad, I think.
For sure.
And I genuinely think of all the films that probably have that kind of aesthetic and do it really, really well, fantastically well, actually, is Kill Bill 1 and 2. I mean, I think, Tarantino kind of took that whole exploitation thing and he did something really bloody clever with it, and really, really cool and fantastic. That looked amazing, and I think that was almost like how good that could be. If you're going to go to that aesthetic. But
I was even I'm a huge fan of Death Proof to this day. Like, out of the two movies of the Grindhouse, I'm pro Death Proof, but that doesn't mean to say that Planet Terror is a bad movie. It just, for me, Death Proof was so good that Planet Terror gets second place.
Yeah, and I think again that's like. There's no point in Death Proof where it becomes a spoof, No. Whereas like Rodriguez was clearly doing a spoof of Grindhouse films, but kind of making a Grindhouse film at the same time, and you get that tonal inconsistency. With Death Proof, it is just he plays it quite straight, and I was surprised when I watched Death Proof just how it's played. It's like over the top, but again, it does the perfect balance of it's over the top, but it's a proper road action horror movie with. That extra 10%, 20%.
It's Tarantino doing the same thing Rodriguez did in terms of like a nod to the format, the vintage format back in the day. But Tarantino does it better because he doesn't do it to death. And but he still has that sort of like, and people always say, what would it be like if Tarantino made a horror movie? I'm like, man, watch Death Proof. Like, fair enough, like in the second half or the last third of the movie, it becomes very much a homage to stunt movies from back in the day, especially car chase movies. But for the first bit, it's very much filmed like a John Carpenter slasher movie, especially with the car park and the grading and the music and like you can't see who's inside the car sort of thing. For that is what a Tarantino horror movie would look like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's although it ends like the end death is very silly. I love it, but it's cool. It's cool. It kind of builds to exactly what it's trying to be.
Yeah.
It feels like an actual exploitation film. Like I don't think anybody would really think Planet Terror actually feels like an action movie from the 70s. Like it does in places, but like you say, it's so over the top. Death Proof, you probably could take back in time, show somebody, and they'd just be like, "That was a great movie."
Yeah.
You know.
It would fit in, but once again, the cell phones and Death Proof.
Yeah. That would be the one thing where they're like, "Well, this is a sci-fi movie."
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's it. I mean, I think overall thoughts from you. I mean, I think I've said enough.
No, I think we're pretty much on the same page in terms of how we felt about the movie and the bits that didn't necessarily work. But I'm well with you on all the positives and all the negatives.
So, but yeah, Jack, we normally give you the honours of picking out the quotes, the memorable quotes. So hit us with some.
Yeah, I mean, my number one. Let's go with the number one. Is no, let's not go with the number. I'll start with one that I just loved, and it's a Bruce Willis line. And this probably comes second place. It almost got one, but it only works because it's delivered by the master that is Bruce Willis. And it's when he's talking about how he killed Bin Laden, and they're like, "You killed Bin Laden?" He's like, "That's right. 2 in the heart, 1 in the computer." It's just like my partner went, "What computer?" I was just like, "It's cool. It's just a cool way to say brain." It's just like absolutely brilliant stuff.
That was a Bruce Willis line.
It's just only he can deliver a line like that cool, and it belongs in a Tarantino Robert Rodriguez universe, and it's just he just belongs delivering lines like that in those movies. So the number one line for me, and it goes back to what you were saying before, that there's just these humorous moments that work. Some don't and some do, but this one by far does, and it's my favorite line in the whole movie, and it's when Fergie gets unveiled, like a corpse gets unveiled. Doctor's just like,
Looks like a no-brainer.
What does that mean?
No brain. Scoop clean out of her skull.
That's so good. Yeah, I mean, genuinely, that's my favourite line in the movie as well. Yeah, that's again, it's just brilliant kind of dialogue that makes you laugh. I love the there's the moment when Josh Brolin is coming down the corridor, and there's the Chinese sort of doctor. It just pulls out and he's like saying like, do you want to like watch? If you want to be with your friend while I take his arm off, and then he's just like, "Nah, it's okay." And he's like, "Suit yourself," and he just pulls him back. And it was just such a brilliant line.
Those moments are very of the time that it was trying to make fun of. It's just like you would find that in a movie that was trying to do it straight. Like it was that made me feel like that those moments made it stink of effort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are the moments where you go, this exactly gets the exploitation feel because that is exactly, the kind of little side characters. It's those little over the top performances you always get in those films, or you only get somebody with 1 or 2 lines. But there was some good stuff.
My last thought, and this is the only thing because we've pretty much covered everything from start to finish. Like I say, we're on the exact same page, and it ties in with the stinking of effort for me. Well, it merges nicely, the stinking of effort, the homage, Robert Rodriguez's style, the coolness. For me, one of the coolest things about this movie is the score. And Rodriguez did the score as well. Originally, he tried to get John Carpenter on to do the score. So watching it back, I didn't realize that he actually scored it until I looked into it afterwards. But I was like, this sounds so good. It's very much John Carpenter. It's very much... it reminded us of Brad Fiedel from the first Terminator movie, which was funny that Michael Biehn was in it because it had those moments of that 80s sort of synth and that wow that you would get in a sort of John Harrison Creepshow movie. It was, and because of that is one of the strongest elements of this movie. You take that, it married so nicely to the style, like the fog on the road and then the wow. Like, I don't know what you think about that.
Perfection, absolute perfection. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I'm amazed I didn't write that down actually as a positive. Yeah, because I enjoyed the hell out of the score all the way through, and in fact, it's one I'm going to be Spotifying. I think because there was just some badass bits on there. I mean, it could have literally been on any great 80s action horror movie. I'm an absolute sucker for that sort of synth sound on a soundtrack. It's pure nostalgia. That's VHS.
Nostalgia. And he made it his own. He chucked in some sexy Rodriguez sax. The sax player even makes an appearance in the jail. I was like, right on, hilarious. But yeah, it
is a very good score. Very good. Okay, well, I think that wraps us up on the general chat. We'll go to a break and we'll talk about Josh Brolin.
Welcome back, everyone. We're at our final segment of this episode, which is where we're talking about my choice and actor for this movie, which is Josh Brolin. Very excited because for me, this was kind of like a resurgence. This movie was like a resurgence for Josh Brolin. He never went anywhere. But I'll touch a bit on his character first, and then we'll go into his history and what came of it. But yeah, his role is very jealous. He's a very imposing doctor figure. Very, very jealous. Very, like I say, at one point, I was getting secondhand anxiety. I felt like I cheated on him, and that was just a testament to the imposing figure he played. And I don't know what you think of this, but I think if this movie was made back at the time that it's a homage to, like the 70s or 80s, I felt like him in this movie had very Tom Atkins qualities.
I love Tom Atkins because he can play a bit like, Josh Brolin can play, we saw it with Mimic, he can play nice guys, but he can also play real
very versatile.
Yeah, sure. Versatile. And I think, Tom Atkins was very similar. Sort of big, because I don't know how big a dude Josh Brolin is, but he comes across as quite a big dude in Planet Terror, and I don't know if it's because his wife is, is like more slight, but he was, he's definitely there was a definite sort of threat and overpowering sort of physicality to him. And Tom Atkins
very good at. It's funny because he is very versatile in that, but he can play like a sort of heroic, not melt, but he can do that. But then he can also play a very manly man, for lack of a better term, which isn't too surprising because he comes from good stock and that his dad was James Brolin.
Yeah,
but, he's like I say, very, very versatile, very imposing. I loved I know we said gimmicks were done to death in this movie, but I quite liked the thermometer in the mouth. I don't know why I liked it so much. And everyone's like, you can catch something from that. He's like, not if I'm the only one. That it's like there's no purpose for it other than it just makes him look like a cool doctor.
Yeah, it's cool. And again, it's another brilliant close up with it because he gets the moment where it I can't remember, the guy says something to him and then and he just shatters it, but it does the sort of crash zoom into the mouth. There's a nice payoff for that. Again, it's like that's one where the gimmick gets done. It's like, okay, he's done now, and then it's there's
an overkill. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think he's brilliant in this. I actually wrote a note down here. I thought he's genuinely quite scary. I think for what is a silly movie, he really plays that kind of abusive husband thing really well in this. And
it's filled with those moments. He's when he's in the kitchen, he suspects his wife's cheating on him. And he asks her something. I can't remember what she says, but she says he asks her a question. Then the answer she gives leads him to suspect more. And then he looks at the son, which is played by Robert Rodriguez's actual son in real life. He looks at the son. He's like, "Do you believe her?" And the son's like, "No." He's like, "Neither do I."
Oh yeah,
that scene. I'm just like, wow, that gave us chills, and it's brilliant because it gives that scene where the kid's in the car. And she's like, anyone that isn't me, shoot them. It gives that scene so much more strength because the kid's like, what if it's daddy? It's like, especially if it's daddy. It's just
Which that again, brilliant moment, right? That was kind of really nailing it. I love the way that he's in it quite a bit, but then they just drop him in throughout the rest of the movie. He just keeps coming back. He's that bad guy. Terminator-esque, he just keeps cropping up. And he said, because what he says at the end is like, I told you I'd find you or something.
Yeah.
He's just there. And it makes no sense at all. He's in this military helicopter. It's just no sense at all. And he's there. And that's what you expect from the husband. He'll just keep rolling up. He plays an absolute trope, right? That really is a trope of kind of old sleazy movies. Is that sort of
like I say, I think that as soon as you picked Mimic and we watched Mimic in the last episode, like I already knew who I was going to pick for this one and we've got a habit of doing this. We have a habit of picking actors in a movie and we remember them being in it more, but that's just a testament to how strong they are in said movies. And I think that is why, to go back on what I said before, this for me was a resurgence for Josh Brolin. He hadn't gone anywhere, but when you start your career as the leader of the Goonies, and he was like everything about that. He wasn't like a kid in that movie. He felt like a grown up. He felt like a leader. Like he nailed that brilliantly. It's aged beautifully, that role. But he didn't go anywhere. But he certainly didn't get any leading actor roles after that. And he dipped out a bit. And he was here and there. He was just a body count in Mimic. But then he did this movie, and then No Country for Old Men, Men in Black 3, Deadpool 2, Thanos, like all the doors just started opening for him. And he's proven what I've always believed to be true. He is an amazing actor and he can carry these movies. He can play leading roles.
Yeah, I think it's a shame in a way because he's been in some stuff. I don't think he's ever bad. It's just like he's been in a few bad films, and I think because like his career took a real bump with Jonah Hex, wasn't it? And which I never actually watched, but he's always like pretty cool in everything he does, actually. And looking at his IMDb is like I've seen him in a lot of films. I think he always plays like memorable characters, and I think you're absolutely right. No Country for Old Men, that's probably the one where I think he really he got his due for that. Like, he really. It was
Robert Rodriguez who helped him get that because they wouldn't even audition him.
Really?
Even allow him to audition, and I think he put a word. He said to Rodriguez, "Can you just put a word in for us?" sort of thing. And then Robert Rodriguez got him that audition. The rest.
Yeah, that's mad because I sort of felt like when he. Because he did Men in Black 3, that didn't do very well. He did Jonah Hex, that didn't do so well. I felt like he was just going to be one of these guys that Hollywood are trying to push that just kind of, for whatever reason, it just wasn't going to work out for. But actually, it's really nice to see him getting his due because, and I think it did, I'm not saying Planet Terror was the reason for that, but I think it was, he definitely was great in it. I think he's definitely, without a doubt, one of the strongest bits of the film. And I think he... to go on and play Thanos, which, whether people love or hate the Marvel stuff, I mean, I think he was one of the all-time great screen bad guys, I think, in those Marvel films.
Especially when he didn't start out as Thanos. It was like someone completely different, and it was like just sort of little clips and voiceover artists here and there. And then when he was going to be front and center in the Infinity War saga, that's when they were like, right, Josh Brolin's taking over. Which is weird, which is a kind of like a credit to him because it's like we're going to have him play Cable too, which is in Deadpool 2, which is weird because I know at the time 20th Century Fox and MCU were sort of different, but they were sort of similar. It's like it might create some confusion. I know they make a joke about it in Deadpool 2, but at the same time, it's like, nope, he's good enough to play both. And that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, I think because he was hiding behind the giant purple chin, I mean, I suppose, it could always be anyone, but he brought such a gravitas to the role of Thanos, played him in a way that was just so much better. And it's the reason I think Endgame and Infinity War are like two of the best blockbusters of recent memory, because I think basically they have such a strong bad guy. I think he makes those films, like he adds more credibility to Thanos' argument than it possibly deserves. And somebody's a good actor when they can play somebody who wants to kill half the galaxy, and you actually go,
it makes sense.
Maybe.
Those are the best villains, the ones that you can sort of empathize with, even if their goal is a bit clouded.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he seems to do well with kind of characters who are just a little bit sort of morally grey as well. Like, I think going back to No Country for Old Men, I think he's just like he's like an everyman, isn't he? Just makes a mistake, but he kind of has to really double down on that mistake, and he's trying to.
And he does the everyman bit so well. On that note, like I say, he can play like an overbearing, like manly man, but like he plays an everyman so well. You go back and watch movies that you completely forget he's in, like Hollow Man. He was like,
I think he's great in
that movie. But my God, I completely forgot Josh Brolin was in that movie because he plays an everyman so well.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, because when I was looking back through, I forgot he was in that as well. That was probably, other than Mimic, the first thing I saw him in. And I remember when I watched that, I came out. I think Hollow Man's okay, but he was definitely one of the strongest parts of it.
He was in Gangster Squad as well, and you wouldn't know it. You think about Gangster Squad, and you think about the likes of like Ryan Gosling and stuff like that, and but like you're like, oh yeah, Josh Brolin was in that movie, sort of thing.
Yeah, I sort of get the impression he's an actor other actors like working with, because he feels like he's probably quite a generous actor, like, because he's always good in everything, but he doesn't try to steal scenes. He's very happy to sort of, just
he's a veteran, and he comes from an acting family, so I think just at his core he just knows the deal, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I think, if you talk about characteristics for him, I think similar to last month's episode, I think his voice, is a big part of the sell, isn't it?
They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass.
And as he's getting older, he's definitely going to be like a kind of Clint Eastwood kind of voice. I think, just getting more gravelly, more gravitas.
I think the main points I would make on Josh Brolin is what I mentioned before. Like when your dad's James Brolin and you also want to get an act and you end up looking just as much of a boss as your dad, I think you're destined for greatness. He started out strong, like I say, as the leader of the Goonies, and like I say, he went into the background, but he did not disappear. And he wasn't even bad in his movies. Like you say, he just played an everyman brilliantly. He accomplished what he set out to do, so much so that you forgot he was in them. But that is not me having a go. That's me just saying he absolutely nailed the everyman role. And then in more recent years, coming back, like I say, for me, I know we're saying this isn't the reason, but it seems to be like the time that he did Planet Terror. After that, No Country for Old Men, Men in Black, he did a brilliant younger Tommy Lee. He nailed playing a badass with Cable in Deadpool 2, and then that led on to Thanos. And in more recent years, Dune. He's like I say, he's just strength to strength.
He's like, he doesn't exude like movie star. That's the thing. He is definitely like, but he's not a kind of character actor. He's that perfect kind of blend somewhere in the middle. I think he's proven with No Country for Old Men he can carry a film, but I don't think he could. I think Jonah Hex and things like that probably proved it. Maybe Men in Black. He hasn't got that kind of star appeal that people go, oh, Josh Brolin. I'm going to go and see a Josh Brolin movie. But he is he is like he's not just a jobbing character.
He does good when there's a good ensemble sort of thing.
Yeah, he's a perfect sort of ensemble actor. Solid. I think he's very dependable. If you see Josh Brolin's name on the poster, you go, right, there's probably some, there's something good about this film.
Yeah, no, sure. Especially like I say, in more recent years, he's just he hasn't made a bad movie like post Jonah Hex.
Yeah. But he's earned his place in those kind of massive blockbusters, and he pulls it off. He does very well. I still think he's a leading man, but I certainly think he's a good solid actor. Okay, cool. So it's time for link
very
number
excited.
6.
Yeah.
Again, you gave me a lot of choice, and there's probably from the various conversations we've had in the first few episodes, it might almost be a bit predictable where I go with this one, but I couldn't help myself because this manages to make me talk about a bunch of things that I want to that I love, so all in one go. So yes, it's the pick for the next episode was one of my other favorite actors in Planet Terror. I loved him as the sheriff. I thought he's brilliant. Michael Biehn,
yes.
Star of 2 of my favorite films of all time. But basically, I thought as the sheriff, like he's so enjoyable in Planet Terror, and that whole buddy chemistry with Jeff Fahey and that kind of stuff. I thought it just reminded me. I actually had forgotten Michael Biehn was in this, and it just reminded me just how bloody good he is. He's on form. So the film I'm going with is The Abyss by James Cameron. The Abyss, that's going to be episode 6. And the chain continues. We are going back into the 80s.
Just when I was out, you dragged me back in. That's it.
There we go. And see where we go from there. But I think that wraps us up. Jack, anything to plug?
As always, if you're a film fanatic and movie maniac, check us out at jackedinmovies.com. We've got articles, reviews, recommendations, weekly video shout outs from yours truly. And like I say, my most recent reviews are going to, when this comes out, will be Kinds of Kindness, Maxine, and Long Legs with Nick Cage. So if you want to check out those reviews, pay us a visit.
Great stuff. And for anybody else, please check out Dark Mass Films. We've got a few more short films coming, which I'll be announcing over the next couple of weeks. And I think that wraps us up. So we shall see you on the next link of Chained.